Hello and welcome back to Diary of a Name Dropper with me, Meredith Hepner Chapman. This week's guest describes himself as a charcuterie fiend, co-founder of Tempus Foods, dad, author, usually hungry and or thirsty, and Masterchef Winner 2010. It is, of course, my foodie name drop and dear friend, Dhruv Baker. So, Dhruv, welcome to Diary of a Name Dropper. I am ecstatic you're on. I really am. Honestly, you're my favourite Masterchef winner ever.
See, and flattery will get you everywhere. So, despite the fact that it was 12 years ago, I will never get bored of hearing that. So, thank you.
It was 12 years ago, but I remember it so vividly because wasn't that the same year Lisa Faulkner, we should say, won Celebrity Masterchef? You were very close. And,
yeah, we. So I finished. I can't remember chronologically who finished filming first, but I remember them saying, being told after I had kind of won that they said we're going to trial something this year because we've got a professional winner, and this was before it had actually finished, and obviously it was during the finals, and they said we're thinking that we'd put you and the professional winner together to do some stuff. And that was all very exciting because I was still slightly petrified at the whole thing. You know, being taken to studios to do the news in the morning was not normal for me. This was a completely different way of life. You know, it was just, I was starstruck and bewildered all at the same time. And I've got so many stories about Lisa and I first meeting on post MasterChef that there's a couple of them which I think you'll quite like, which always make me giggle. But I remember somebody saying, and this was after I'd known that Lisa had won, but it was under embargo, so I had to pretend and play dumb.
I didn't even know, and her sister is my best friend, and I didn't even know.
Well, they did very well to keep the secret. I remember being asked, who would you like to win MasterChef, the celebrity? And of course, I'd have to say Lisa, but you couldn't really say that in an interview. So you'd say, oh, well, you know, I'd be happy if it was anyone because they're all brilliant. But then I did say, but I'd quite like it to be Lisa. And the interview said, oh, and why is that? With a knowing kind of slightly mischievous glint in their eye. And I knew what they were thinking. And I said, just because I don't think I could sit opposite Dick Strawbridge and watch him eat soup. So they did not see that coming a mile away. Obviously, they thought it was going to be back to her, you know, modelling days where, you know, Lisa, when I was going up through university, Lisa was kind of everywhere and she was known to everyone. So
yeah, FHM's sexiest woman.
Yeah, all of that. So actually, they were a bit disappointed that I referenced Dick Strawbridge's moustache eating soup.
And totally relatable, I have to say. I do get icks when there's certain things in front of me when I'm trying to eat.
And moustache filtered soup is one of them.
Yeah. Well,
but do you know what, Lisa? You've known Lisa forever, and she's just one of the sweetest, kindest, most genuine people. And it all sounds a bit showbiz, right? Which my life is so far from. Is that they said you've got to go out for lunch with Lisa. You know, winner of Celebrity, winner of Amateur. We thought you guys would get on, and we'll just see how you get on. So you need to go and meet our head of commercial at the Groucho Club for lunch. And one, I'd never been there. Two, I hadn't even heard of it. That's how uncool, you know, I am. So I'm standing outside this place, wondering if it's the right place in Soho. And walking down the street in the distance, there's this very petite little blonde figure who gets closer and closer. But as she gets closer, she slightly alarmingly started to break into a bit of a run. And I couldn't quite make her out. But by the time I recognised who it was, she had almost like launched herself into this kind of flying hug. And the first thing she said was, I'm so sorry, I feel like I know you. And the second thing was, I don't normally dress like this. I've had to be in an audition for a frumpy woman. And so that was the opening gambit, at which point we went into the restaurant.
In with an apology.
Straight in there, 2 apologies, and then into the restaurant. And we only knew it was somebody who was American, but we'd never met them. So she and I were at the bar, and this American guy, came over and said, you guys ready to sit down? I said, oh, yeah, sorry. So we went and sat down, and he said, so I'm so glad you've taken the time to come and see me. Who of you is going to present your ideas? And I kind of was like, what the hell are you talking about? I thought, oh, Lisa must have been briefed. I'll just be asked about some food. And Lisa looked as puzzled as me. And we started like treading water a little bit, at which point there's a tap on my shoulder with another American who turned out was the right one. We had just sat down at the wrong American's table. And that pretty much set the tone for the rest of our friendship. Has always been this slightly calamitous collection of, well, hilarious events.
No, she's very, very, very funny. And I have to say, I mean, obviously there's always the, blonde FHM. I witnessed her filming that and all the work that went in and how passionate she was and what a perfectionist she was about it. And I mean, I don't think I had to cook a meal for my family for the entirety, because they'd be like, there's some venison chops here. Do you want them? And it'd be like, Jeremy will eat them. And it became a sort of catchphrase. Jeremy will eat it. And it was wonderful. But she was such a deserving winner because it could all consuming. I mean, if you're going to do it, and it does consume you. And I'm sure people think, I bet the celebrities just go in and it's all done for them and all that. And it's not.
It's not, and I think it's a lot of them, you see them there and you think, why are you there? And they obviously think they've just been shoved on by their agent. But Lisa, I think that she is at heart a feeder and has an immensely generous soul. And John is exactly the same. They're basically two feeders who are immensely generous. And so they kind of feed off each other. And their show is all about that. It's genuinely good fun to watch. It's honest. It's heartfelt. It's their recipe. So I think that honesty and her obsession with food, and I don't use the word lightly, but obviously strongly inspired by her mother. But her relationship with food is a really deep one. And I think that's the difference. People who are that committed to it. And that, it's just testament to that, with the fact that she's made a new career in that. Or another career, I should say.
I think it's brilliant, and to do the cooking with the presenting is a dream come true. And Victoria, her sister, is such a wonderful cook. We used to always giggle about the sort of 80s food we were making. Coleslaw with pizza. And I remember Lisa judged a dog show for my mum years and years ago. I think this was before Masterchef, and there was the most 80s buffet ever, like deviled eggs and rice with raisins, and Victoria turned to me and said, Lisa loves a buffet. And I was so mortified, that this is what we were giving a celebrity guest. And honestly, loves food, just both Victoria and Lisa. Always, the food's wonderful. It's always beautifully presented. It tastes so good. They're just perfect, aren't they, really?
Yeah, exactly.
But
exactly. And there's nothing wrong with a deviled egg at all. I mean, I had a lunch party the other day, and I made deviled eggs, and I think they're delicious and retro and slightly hilarious, but I say bring them back. And I'd love a mushroom vol au vent as well if there's one going spare. You would not believe this, but I also served mushroom vol au vent.
Stop it.
In the same outing with no hint of irony.
Do you know, I hated Scotch eggs until I had a Lisa Faulkner Scotch egg at the royal wedding. Not actually at the royal wedding.
I was going to say, that would be the clang of all clangs.
Kate
and
Williams.
Appropriate.
Kate and William's wedding. We had street pie. Food was just, definitely be friends with people that are on MasterChef. That's my life hack.
Always.
So how did you?
Always.
You obviously. This is why I love you, because I love this is my diary of a name dropper, because the world of celebrity is just so normal. Really, celebrities are just like us, but there is this stigma about saying you're friends with the celebrity, and people automatically thinking, "Oh, it's a name drop." But
exactly,
you came from not a world of celebrity. Could you take me back to what on earth possessed you? Or were you entered secretly by someone else? What's the background, the food love?
So, the honest truth. So, the food love has always been there, right? And I've always loved food. I've always loved cooking. I've always been intrigued and fascinated by it. And I think having been brought up I was born in Mexico, but then moved to India.
Yeah, you were born in Mexico. That's so cool.
Yeah, so born in Mexico, lived there till I was 5, moved to India, lived there for 10 years, came to school here, but since then have lived in East Africa, have lived in Spain, lived in Mexico again. So I think there's this...
Is that through work?
That was through my dad's work up until the East Africa bit, and then I lived in Spain as part of my degree. I then went back to Mexico for a year just to kind of do my own thing for a bit. So there was always this affinity with those countries, and I think, well, I don't think it's obviously where the kind of love of spices originally
two countries
sort of cropped up
together.
Yeah, I mean, they use the same spices. They just use them in very, very different ways. But which is why it was funny when we were talking about your lack of spices in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, before we came on air, I was explaining to Dhruv about our local Tesco's in our very small town, which doesn't really push the boundaries of excitement when it comes to, I think that all the foodies do definitely either get home delivery or go to Waitrose.
Or go to Waitrose. There we go.
Come on, Tesco's Tring, you can do better than that. We're foodies here.
There's the gauntlet down. Yes, how the MasterChef. I mean, to me, going through school and university, cooking was never a genuine career choice, and I think that leads to a bigger problem. I do think that, you know, in Italy or Spain or France or Germany or Austria or Switzerland, it's the career, whether you're front of house or back of house. But here, okay, chefing a bit, but hospitality doesn't really seem to be pushed that hard in this country as a career, but it's a brilliant career.
I've never thought about it like that. That's right.
Well, I think it's almost one of those jobs or one of those careers that, for some inexplicable reason, the inhabitants of this island seem above. There's this kind of, I don't know where it comes from. I mean, I'm sure we could delve deep into the history of the empire. There you go. You know, it's pretty much, it's not actually, it doesn't take too much digging, but, you know, there are sectors that do fall into that category, and I think much to the detriment of the country, because I think it's an incredible industry, and as such it wasn't, you know, deemed, in inverted commas, a proper career. So then I did the usual thing. I went to university, came out of university not having a clue what I wanted to do, fell into a job which then, before you know it, you've been doing for 10 years, and realised I could actually do this job, in all honesty, in about half to a day a week. So I spent the rest of my time reading about food, learning about different things, spending an awful lot of time playing Tetris or equally mind-numbing things. But it was during this time that I was whinging about being bored at work, and my wife and a very good friend of mine said, well, why don't you apply for MasterChef, which to me seemed like a really stupid idea. But I did. I Googled it, and the form, this kind of wonky form, was printed off, and I filled it in, scanned it, and sent it off, and that was it, and didn't think anything of it. Until I got a phone call a few weeks later, which I thought was a friend winding me up, so I was quite rude on the phone.
Oh no! I can imagine.
I thought it was a wind up, and somewhere there's a handwritten, printed off form, and somebody will have written, "Bit of a knob, probably can cook," and then, you know. And
Get
that
him
was
on.
phase one. Yeah, they thought, you know, this guy sounds a bit
For the
quirky.
shits and giggles.
Proper weirdo on the phone. To then having a screen test, which was the most surreal experience up until that point, which was going on the Northern Line with a Tupperware. So the brief was it couldn't be hot or cold because it had to be served at room temperature.
Right.
So it
can't be hot or cold.
Like, it can't be something that needs to be served piping hot.
Right.
And it can't be served, it can't
Chilled.
be like ice cream, so it'll melt.
Okay. Right,
So it's got to be tepid.
A volleyball.
So I was like, see, with hindsight now, I wish I had.
Deviled eggs and volleybons.
That would have been the way to go. But would that be pre-irony? Would it just come across as naff? Who knows?
Yeah.
But I made these like chicken koftas with chili and coriander, and I had like a satay sauce with them and other bits and pieces. And I sat down with them, and the first thing one of the people said was, "I'm allergic to nuts." And I thought, well, this is going bloody well from the interview to now this. So there I am with my room temperature Tupperware meagre offering in front of me, looking kind of weird. Interview, and then a few weeks later got a letter saying, hurrah, you're on the show. And the rest kind of unfolded. And each stage became more and more bizarre, which was the first test was the old invention test, which I still love. I was in a room with 6 people, and we were all given your ingredients, but no one had said anything, and John, Mr. Terode, was singing Girls Aloud songs to himself. I can't remember
He
the
loves
one.
a boogie. He loves a boogie.
He does love a
Mr.
boogie.
Terode.
very much so. And he said, "Are you not going to cook anything?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he sort of pointed above him, and the clock had already started. And I assumed that it was all fudged for telly, right? But when he said start cooking, he meant start cooking. I just assumed everything would stop. We'd then get a bit of paper. We'd be able to give half an hour to think about what you're going to cook. And then, you'd start again. But it wasn't. It was as it comes across. And I thought, oh, God, there's my first warning shot. That this is as you see it on telly. It's not.
Oh, my God.
It's not engineered in any way. And that was the start of it, right? And after that, it was just like running down a hill at full pelt, thinking you're going to fall over at some point unless you keep running faster. And that is kind of how it went, really, from then on in.
And what's the filming schedule like? How many days? Do you have to pack your job in, or you were already doing it because you minimalised condensed it down to 1.5 day, or and the other thing as well, what's the gap between filming and then screening, because you've got to keep a secret?
Oh, that was the hardest bit. So initially it was fine. You did 1 day, there was 2 days filming. If you got through the invention test, you got the next day. But then there was nothing till the next month. And then the next month you were through to the next round. But then it was like 3 days that week. And if you got through, then it was 2 days the following week. And so the gaps became smaller and smaller the further you progressed. So early on, when it was like 128 contestants being whittled down, you then had a month off. But then by the finals, you're filming every day. We were in India for a week, and then we came back, and a day later I was at Holland, and somebody else was in Spain, and somebody else was in Italy. So by the end of it, it's kind of every day. So it gets harder to make up excuses. So I told my business partners had to sign NDAs, but everyone else, I just said I was on jury service.
Oh, you can't even say you're filming it?
No, and they don't tell you that till the quarters, after I told everyone in the world that I was on MasterChef. And then they go, "Oh, you by the way, you can't tell anyone." It's like, great, that would have been good to know.
Everyone
7 weeks ago.
Shut up. Everyone just
No, but then you've got to tell everyone that you've been knocked out. So then everyone thinks, what a loser, he's out in the quarters type thing. And you get that pity kind of withering look from people going, "Oh, are you back now?" So more and more sort of concertinaed in terms of timing. But also, we finished filming like October, November, and it didn't go on, it didn't finish till March.
Oh, that is a long time.
It's painfully long. So
that's
I said
a weird
to my
Christmas.
Weird Christmas, and also you find yourself in this weird place where you wake up at the night thinking, was it all a dream? And you think you've fabricated this whole thing. So you create this kind of weird, like, survivors group with the other 2 finalists who rely on each other, keeping each other from going completely crackers. And then you convince yourself that it was all a dream, or that no one will watch it, and like we'll all go back to life as we knew it, and it'll all be a bit normal. It was just very odd, because you're so far removed from anything that was normal.
And then March 2010, it went
And then
live.
March 2010, and then it sort of finished, and then everything just went completely nuts after that.
Well, we met you at MasterChef Live, I think.
Yep.
And you were doing lots and lots of stuff there. I mean, it's intense. But yeah, so it just went nuts, I'm assuming. And you get an agent, and what happens? You're suddenly in this world of, what the hell? I'm not a loser.
Well, that's kind of it. Yeah, you're like, well, now what do I do with it? And you think, well, what do you do with it? So I said, I'm not going to rush into anything. So the first thing I did was emailed and phoned all the chefs I'd kind of got to meet through the show that I really wanted to work from, because ultimately I was a home cook who had a good day on a cookery competition.
Oh, that's very...
if you really pare it back a bit.
No.
But I genuinely say that between Tim and Alex and I, it could have been any one of us on the day. It just happened to be my day. And I still stand by that.
What was your winning dish? I've slept since then, sorry. What did you do? What did you do on the final?
So we had three courses. I think I did a lobster, which was poached in like a ginger butter. And that was served with celeriac, puree and some other bits and pieces.
I love celeriac.
Then there was a venison dish with like a spiced potato and fenugreek crust around the venison. There was like spiced carrots and some other and a spiced venison jus. And then the dessert, which people still ask for, was like, it's a bit sort of naff and 90s, but it was like the old trio of desserts. It was a pear poached in sauterne and saffron, a rum truffle with pistachio, and a masala chai ice cream. So spiced tea ice cream.
Oh, I remember the pears. I remember it's all coming back to me. I love a bit of a retro. I got Stephen Carter Bailey, our friend who won Bake Off, did Jeremy a Black Forest Gatto for his birthday, and it was blimming brilliant. 80s.
Still one of my favourite gâteau cake things imaginable.
You have to have a Stephen Carter Bailey Black Forest Gatto, actually. It's insane. I mean, we were pissed within the first forkful. It was so boozy.
That's a great sign.
Oh, he's good. He's good. How is your baking?
Awful. Ironically, it's absolute drivel. Because there's a huge difference between hot kitchen and baking. In baking, it's as much science and precision as art. Whereas in the hot kitchen, you can fix a dish if you're impatient, for instance, and rush things and cock it up. You can bring it back. But with baking, I don't have the patience.
No. But do you watch Bake Off?
So hats off. I do, and actually, there's this degree of envy. It's like I have no idea where you'd even start with some of these things.
Patience.
It's a lot of patience.
And they're artists, aren't they? I mean, it's not just about the baking. It's if you look at some of the creations that are on Bake Off, and you just think, what? I mean, Stephen made me the armadillo from Steel Magnolias. He made me the armadillo cake.
Right.
For my birthday. And it was just, what? No, this is just a dead armadillo. I mean, you've literally made a real life armadillo. I don't know if I want to eat it. Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? And that relentless creativity. And I've got to meet quite a few of those Bake Off winners, and they're all just this unlimited amount of creativity.
But spices, what you're doing, I might be wrong here, because I know cocktail makers now like to call themselves mixologists. But for me, I really, and this is something Stephen has taught me on many a live bake-along, because I'm a bit like, it doesn't matter if it's a gram over or it's a gram under. It is all in the science. And I'm imagining spice mixing is really down to you don't just throw your spice. I'm sure you do now because you know exactly how much to put in. But when you're creating your spice bases, look at me acting as though I'm a cook.
No, but you're absolutely right.
You create the spice mix first when you do. You dry fry spices together, don't you? Make pastes and all that loveliness.
I mean, there's loads of things to doing them, but I cooked so a friend had a barbecue on the weekend. I spoke to him a few weeks ago and he's in a bit of a panic about it. So I said, I'll do it if it's helpful. I'll help him out. I'll come and do the food. And we had the spice conversations and he said, well, I'd do the spice crab mayo dish with whole spices through it.
That's just my favourite.
And he said, well, how many attempts did you take for this? And I said, well, actually, if I'm honest, one, because I can visualise the flavours, if that makes sense. Without sounding like a complete nut job.
You almost see the
In
colours.
a way, I see it more like shading. So you see it like it's a page with shading on it, and the spices add bits and pieces. So actually, I kind of know what it's going to taste like before I've even had the first attempt at it, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense because your curries are the best curries in the world.
Thank
Victoria's
you.
husband had I think his 40th you catered for.
Also, one of the nicest men in the whole world.
And brilliant at Running Man. Just putting it out there. He is the best man at
multi-talented.
Running Man on the dance floor. He can, yeah. But these curries are just, everyone was just like, feeding time at the zoo because it was just glorious. You are a master. It's a pure science. So I'm just so impressed. The only thing I really can relate to is you mentioned fenugreek, and I get fenugreek a lot for the reason that it keeps it's very good for dog skin and respiratory, and if you put fenugreek in their food,
right,
it's really. So this is the thing as well. Spices have so many holistic and healing properties as well. They're not just for food. I take turmeric for my arthritis, and so there's so many healing properties. So I'm guessing with a curry, you're kind of medicating yourself. But yeah,
I think so.
Spices are definitely because dogs don't lie. so you can use a placebo but if a dog's got a cough and you give them fenugreek and their cough goes, it's a one. Honestly, I always think, look at what Mother Nature gave us before reaching for the prescription pad, because...
Well, the Ayurvedic principles, a lot of it is based on different spices. And that's something that's been around for thousands of years. And actually in Kerala, you can get prescribed various Ayurvedic treatments on the equivalent of the NHS because they've been proven over millennia that they work. So there is absolutely something there, and the fact that certain spices in the right blends will actually act as a preserving agent, and you can actually store meat with them instead of just with salt. So
really,
there are loads of properties. God. Yeah, absolutely. So there's one of our salamis that I shot with Tempus, my charcuterie company. The blend of spices is based on a pickling spice. So achari or achar means pickle or pickling in Hindi, and that blend of spices would have historically been used as a preserving agent. And I thought it'd be quite cool to take a spice blend inspired by that, with processes from subcontinental Asia, with processes from Southern Europe, from also maybe 1500, 2000 years ago, and putting them together to create something relevant and different and original today. And I think that's kind of cool, where you take two completely disparate practices and processes.
And without the use of horrible preservatives as well.
So yeah, there is definitely more to it than meets the eye, and I think there's more and more books. The Natural Doctor. I forget what a lot of people are looking at more plant-based things. So there is definitely more out there, and I think historically brushed off as tree huggery and mumbo jumbo, but there's definitely and undoubtedly, exactly, just sort of dismissed,
or just enlightened. I think I like to call it enlightened, but for those who can't spell it, just call us woke, But for me, could you give me your top 5? I know that's because I want to. You wrote a book. We should probably talk about the book, and then I want you to tell me your super 5 spices. The book is called.
It's called Spice Layers of Flavour. Okay, top 5. So black pepper has to be in there.
Right, now why? Because I have to have, my turmeric has to have black pepper in it, apparently, to make it really effective.
Okay,
so
well, that's why it'd have to be on your list. But for mine, it's just such a rounded spice. It has heat, it has fruit, depending on the type of pepper you're using. Lots of it you can create a kind of almost like a chili heat, not quite chili, more of a kind of throaty than palate heat. But it's just very versatile, and it's the most widely used spice on earth.
Oh, okay.
So
Jeremy's not a fan
of black pepper.
No, you need to help me get it right, because I love it. I love black pepper, and I put it on everything.
So what you need to do is try a Caroline black pepper crab.
Okay, I'm making a note of this.
And at the same time, an old school fillet steak with peppercorn sauce, but using crushed black pepper, not green peppercorns. So that's two ends of the spectrum food-wise, both using the same ingredient. And the kind of no interest, bit floral.
Dissing.
If I'm only going to get 5,
right? Okay.
If I had like 20, they'd get on there, but not the 5.
We'll get to 5 and see where we're at. So we've got black pepper, number 2.
100% fennel seed. 100% fennel seed.
Diuretic on my list.
Coriander seed. 100% has to be on there as well.
Would you substitute a coriander fresh leaf for a coriander seed? If it's because
never. Different
right?
Things,
okay.
Completely different things. So flavour wise, so if you think coriander seed, before they're toasted, they've got this amazing citric, perfumed, floral note, which means they're beautiful with fish and they're quite delicate, and you can actually try and do a lemon drizzle cake, but boil untoasted coriander seeds in the syrup and then strain it, and you'll add like this amazing florality and this depth to the syrup. But then toast them up a bit and they become much more nutty and rounded and savoury, and then they kind of lend themselves really well to more red meat, and they're a much more robust flavour. So I think, again, based on the versatility, you can use them in all sorts of things. So they would be on my list, and then that's already made me think that the 4th would have to be vanilla.
Vanilla again, one that I would just think that's so vanilla, that's so bland.
A vanilla pod. because of what it's come to
Well,
mean.
people say that's
something
so
that's vanilla.
bland, that's so vanilla,
Yeah,
but
so
you would
vanilla.
have it in your top 5, okay.
Yeah, I would say a vanilla pod, a fresh vanilla pod, is so far from what, in inverted commas, what vanilla has come to mean. It's like the most amazing, exotic, complex, delicious, quite a sexy flavour.
And can you use it in savoury?
Yeah, I use it in savoury. If I do like a braised pork belly dish, I use braised pork belly with like vanilla mash. So you infuse the cream with a bit of vanilla and that goes to the mash. It adds a really lovely note.
Oh, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, vanilla is a delicious flavour. It adds real complexity and depth to things. Now my fourth one, it's like, where would I go with the fourth one? I would... See, it's between no, I think, cumin.
Another very good one.
It's quite blunt, but it's quite a big flavour. But actually, you can blend it with some of the other ones to create things that are a bit more complex.
Now, that's the base for chili, isn't it? Mexican cumin. Am I thinking cumin you use a lot in Mexican food?
Yeah, Mexicans do use a fair bit of cumin. It's the kind of proportions are all different. The chilies that they use in Mexico tend to be very different species and types. But then they've got their own ones that you wouldn't see outside of Mexico. Things like, I can't remember, it's achiote paste, which are the berries the seeds of a berry ground into a paste. And it's this deep red, smoky, slightly tart paste, which adds colour and an amazing kind of complexity.
And then how would you use it?
Well, that one you'd use it in a marinade, in rubs. It goes into sauces. There's a lot of, it's just the sort of combination of spices. All the ratios tend to be quite different, but there are definitely similarities in the sort of palettes, but certain ones that are definitely country specific. But I just think there's so much complexity and they add so much depth to dishes. But they are scary. They can ruin dishes if they're used sort of heavy-handedly. Things like saffron. Saffron can ruin a dish if people have kind of wield it clumsily, but just a little hint of it.
I watched a programme on saffron farming, and I don't know why anyone would wield it clumsily, because it's so expensive and such a performance to pick.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
With tweezers, isn't it? And there's people that have just flower farms just for saffron.
Yep, more expensive than gold by weight.
So why would you use it in abundance anyway? God, I wouldn't.
Clumsy. So there's my 5.
Well, okay, so someone hasn't got a very big budget and they want to really zhuzh up their meal times. Those 5 spices that they can have, they're going to get really lovely, tasty food and lots of great meals. And they're not expensive, are they? I mean, saffron is.
Saffron is, yes.
But all the others.
No, the others aren't. But, things like invest in small pots from the supermarket. Star anise, there's another one that I adore. Cinnamon sticks. All of these things can be used very sparingly. They're inexpensive and you can get them at the supermarket. But if you go to like the Indian supermarket or the Asian supermarket, which you may or may not have nearby, they're even cheaper. So once you've tasted the ones that you want, and actually the beauty about those shops is you get them in like sacks, but you go along the rack and the bags get smaller and smaller and smaller until you get to like the 50 to 100 gram bags of them. Get the one, buy one of all of the small ones, work out the ones you're going to start using more often, and then buy them in bigger bulk once you're more comfortable cooking with them.
Yeah, that it definitely works out better. I remember finding a brilliant place. There's a brilliant place in North London, but there's a place in Luton as well. And you literally, it's either 2 kilos. So I don't think we need that much turmeric. It is really, really hard for people to know where to start. But your book is an explanation of spice and in the history and because it's been made into a kids version. Have I hallucinated that? Was it?
I actually wrote a different book because I was approached to write a book for kids.
Ah,
and it was meant to be one to be taught, as part of curriculum in schools. And I said,
brilliant.
Yeah, 100%, I'll do this because I've got kids. If you can, and I know how tricky it is to get them excited about food. So it was written about spices, but woven in with mythology and pirate stories and making it kind of a bit more exciting to hopefully get kids. But kids are easy to get excited. They are genuinely inquisitive. They like hearing cool stories. And if you can, weave those into spices, then hopefully that one ingredient becomes a bit more exciting and something that they're willing to try.
Yeah.
So that was the kind of thought process behind that.
Name the leading spice in this meal, kids.
Yeah, there you go. Well, actually, train their palates.
Yeah. Do you think cooking with them as well definitely makes kids love food more, and just that whole relationship with food? We've got such a love-hate relationship
100%.
with food in this country, haven't we? Such a
Yeah.
misinformation. I mean, you only need to mention India, how, food is also medicine, and it's chai tea and all these wonderful things that have, for me, sort me right out if I'm having any type of anxiety, rather than, rattling around in a pill bottle. So to start that relationship early on, that love affair with food, immediately the relationship is going to be better if you know what you're putting in your body, and
Yeah.
there's so much
And you
crap.
widen it. You don't fall into the trap of giving your kids the same thing. You give them as many tastes and textures and flavors as you can from day one, and then hopefully, as they get older, they're not going to get put off by it. But if they're early on and they throw a wobbler, then it becomes like a kind of protest, because I'm not eating if it's not chips or whatever it is. And then you fall into that trap of, well, if they don't eat chips, they don't eat anything, so I'll give them chips. And then the kids start to kind of wield their power. So it's a tricky one, but I think making it as fun, but it's all well and good saying that. But, if both of you work, both parents work, and the kids are at school and you're rushing around, it takes time and it takes planning. And if you don't have that, the most natural thing to do is to reach for a ready meal, or something that you can prepare that you're comfortable with. And so I think it's increasingly difficult and the fact that schools are no longer really teaching it. That, I think, is a critical mistake, because you take away that knowledge from a young age, and then you get this generation that go to university, and then you just eat crap because you've never been taught how. And then actually, if you finish university, well, how are you supposed to then cook for your next generation? It just cements that lack of connection with it. And I think, everyone will go, oh, well, I make the effort. It's like, well, great. But actually, on a macro level, I think that needs to be more done we have a very different relationship with this country. I love going to the continent. You go in Spain or in France or in Italy, or in India, and people will be arguing over breakfast what they're going to eat for lunch. And at lunch, they're arguing about what they're going to eat for dinner. And it's this, people argue about where serves the best octopus. And there'll be like 5 people all shouting their case. And you think, isn't that brilliant that people are that passionate about something that niche, that it warrants an hour-long discussion at lunch? And I love that. But we don't, it doesn't happen here.
I think that's also the same with alcohol in this country. You go to France and people drink because they want to taste the different wines, and they choose their wines to accompany their meal. And I think here in this country, we kind of eat to stay alive and drink to get drunk. It just feels that's what's the sort of, even the consumer, the media message, it's all about drinking to get drunk and not actually the taste of something. And you're so right. My daughter started university in the pandemic anyway, which was a nightmare. So it was pretty much takeaways and pot noodles and all that. But by the second year, she was really craving and realising as well how cost effective it is to prep and plan. So my ex-husband's Greek. So my kids grew up with Greek Yaya and Bapu, and making meatballs from day one. And what's the name of that thing they eat? Gumbares. No, not gumbares. It's like a golumbra. It's like a big radish. And my Greek's not brilliant, but so much, food and fruit that they probably wouldn't have experienced living in just an English family. And so my mother-in-law was very much, waste not, want not, and no. If you cook loads of sauces, you can freeze them and then use them again. And actually, people always go, oh, it's so pretentious to say, eating fresh saves money. But it's not so much the sort of cooking fresh every day. It's more the preparation and the planning and thinking, actually, do you know what? I can get 4 meals out of this chicken. And if I've then done a roast chicken and I've had a really nice spice mix done that I've got prepped, or a sauce, you've got then the chicken that you can have then with a sauce the next day with I don't know. I just think we need to educate our kids so much more on just enjoying and really loving food and not seeing it as a chore or a burden, and actually seeing it as something that nourishes and is something that you go into a Greek family, and I'm sure it's the same with an Indian family and a Mexican family. The whole life revolves around the kitchen. It's just there. It's the epicenter, and it's all about food and exactly that. Who's going to cook, and Bapu overboiled the octopus, and da-da-da, nobody does it as good as Nitsa. And you're so right, and I think that's really lacking here in this country. It's such a shame, and to take it away from the curriculum as well, it's like, oh no. So it's our job as parents.
Well, exactly, and it's not easy, but it's worthwhile. But you also don't want to be the only parent doing it, because if the kid can cook, then they become the freak. No kid wants to stand out.
And you're the smug parent that's doing the other parents no fair. Oh, look at her, so irritating, cooking her child fresh food.
Yeah.
Are supermarket spices as good as, the brands like Schwartz and I always think, well, there's one there that's really expensive, and then there's a Tesco's own one which is 89p. Am I still getting a decent spice?
I would have thought they'd probably come from the same suppliers.
Right.
There are grades and grades, there are grades and there are grades of spices, and some will be of a higher quality, and it's just a case of using them when they're still fresh. So, everybody's got hundreds of spices in their drawers which have been there since like the 80s, that they inherited from their parents or something.
Literally, you've seen my drawer.
Well, it's, and it's the country over, but it's actually been all of those. Find a recipe or two that you like the look of. Actually sit down, go through a book that excites you, buy all the ingredients you need for it, and then just make a habit of using them more often, because if they're kept in direct sunlight, they lose a lot of their kind of vibrancy.
Yeah, spice racks are not great, apparently, are they?
They're not. Near heat is not good. So, where you got those old spice racks in the sort of sunlight above the hob is the worst place for them, because that's heat and sun.
Yeah, proper 80s.
Exactly.
That's why everything tasted the same in the 80s. We've been chatting for ages, and I could chat to you for hours, but you are a busy man. You wrote the book, then the catering, Earlsfield.
Earlsfield Kitchen, yeah.
Earlsfield
so I did that for a few years.
Right. So, and is that where we would have had these lovely curries from? And because that was just incredible when you.
Probably actually that was part of the offering. I mean, that was very much, people might have wanted like a 7-course tasting menu, or they might have wanted bowl food, they might have wanted kind of Mexican or Indian. So it was really whatever people wanted, and we were quite versatile in that. But at the same time, I had the pub, which was the Jolly Gardeners in Earlsfield, which was my sort of pub restaurant I had for a few years. And at that time, the shock, only working in a restaurant is not great hours-wise if you've got a young family. So my business partner, Tom Whitaker, who was runner-up in 2011 for Masterchef, he had lived in Italy for a number of years. He lived in Rome, but did a lot of training in the Po Valley, learning about charcuterie from sort of technical masters, modern day masters. And I kind of fell into it with him because we'd be using the same kitchen. He'd be making amazing looking salamis, and I'd be there making canapes and board witless. And I started writing flavours for him. So I've actually incorporated my love of spices with his technical understanding of charcuterie, and now we actually melded the two. So all of our products have a unique sort of spice blend through them.
You never think of people making salami. You'd see it sliced in a packet, so you make the salami and with all your spices in, and then it's cured, and it must be a really big, long process, but how fascinating.
Well, the hams are a year. Our hams mature for a year. The salamis are about 3 or 4 months. The coppers and the loins, they're about another 4 or 5 months. So, it takes a while. But, it's something that I find quite exciting. I love the sort of time, and I love all the stuff that goes into charcuterie production. I love that you can actually enhance it by using spices.
And Tempus is your charcuterie, and you've got lots of exciting things which you're not allowed to talk about happening with Tempus.
Unfortunately and sadly, not yet.
But it's good. It's good that you can't say something.
It's good. It is good. I'm hoping I'll be able to soon, but it's just one of those things where we've been doing it for 5 years. We see the last 5 years as kind of proof of concept. We've managed to get listed in amazing places, and we've won best charcuterie in the country awards galore and that kind of thing. But now it's a case of what do we do with this, and how do we move forward? And that's kind of the process we're sort of going through at the moment.
So can we buy them? Can you get them online?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. So you can get them online either straight from us. You can get them, if you're in town, you can get them in Fortnum's.
Oh, Fortnum's, of course. I mean, go hard or go home.
Well, that's what we've always said.
Don't mess about. Don't mess about with Sainsbury's.
No. So, I mean, our website has an online shop on it. We have loads of online retailers.
We're going to put all the links in the stories anyway, so people can find
people will be able to find it. And I'm sure we have stockists all over the UK. So
what should we all be trying? Give us something a little, because I don't know where to start with a charcuterie, but I want something that you recommend.
Of our stuff?
Of course.
So the achari salami, 100%, because that's one we discussed, which is based on that Indian pickling spice blend.
So there's no horrible preservatives in it. It's purely spices.
We use salts. I mean, legally you have to because we don't want to be killing anyone. But these are fermented products. So salamis are fermented. I know there's at the moment, the sort of zeitgeist around fermentation is kind of, it's very much of the time, but these things.
I love it. My grandmother was German, so I grew up on salami and sauerkraut.
There we go.
I'm basically embalmed already.
So it's good to go. We use, there is a move against nitrates and nitrites, and I think I understand the sentiment, but I think when you look at it in the context, we use it's something like 0.001% of volume. And actually, if you look at that as the actual active nitrite, it's even less than that. So I know there is a lot of conflicting stuff around it. But what I always say is that I understand there is a question mark around some of these products, but I do know there's no question mark around botulism. I know it exists. So my hedge against something like botulism, until I know otherwise or an alternative, from a safety perspective, we aren't going to roll the dice.
It's minuscule as well. I mean, we talked about 80s food earlier. I mean, we grew up with bright pink salami. I mean,
oh my God, I'm so glad you said that, because
I'm still here.
And that stuff was awful. It was unpalatably salty.
Mush, and it just sort of mushed in your mouth.
And the colour of those highlighters, right? It was rank.
Neon pink.
Just the worst.
Pink. Still here, though. And I mean, German food is all about meat and dried meat, and I'm still here. I mean, all these things, enjoy them in
moderation.
Moderation. But yours, I think, the fact that it's as natural as it can be without anyone getting botulism.
But do you know what? There's bits around that I'm really passionate about, and genuine. I know it's a word that everybody just lobs around with gay abandon, but we only use ex-breeding sows for all of our production. So all of our pigs. I love that. Are a byproduct from an industry. So we're not, anyone can breed more animals. Anyone can create more. What we're saying is that we're saying we need to eat less meat. We agree, but we're saying actually let's look at the wastage from a really inefficient industry and how do we turn that into luxury products.
This is brilliant.
All of our pork is from sows, breeding sows, who are, when they are no longer, and I hate saying this, when they are no longer commercially viable, because it's disgusting to attribute the words commercially viable to a living thing, but that is the world. So if we can take those animals, which would be destined for export or pet food, and actually turn those into stuff that's in Fortnum's and in Selfridges and, at that top food tier, then we would much rather do that. Because I think also these animals are 3-4 years old, and a commercially reared pig for the pork you get in the supermarket is probably 5 months old. So I would much rather use animals at the end of their lives than at the start.
Yeah.
And that's where tempus comes around. Tempus, Latin for time. It's about time in the context of the age of the animals. It's about time in the context of the time we take to cure and age these meats. And it's about time that we were more responsible about animal protein as an industry. And we've done exactly the same with any of our beef product. We only use ex-dairy cattle.
This is a beautiful ethos. I really love this. This is so
Yeah.
special because there is that, oh God, talking about meat. And I know John's been trolled before in the past when he's posted potentially a meat dish and things like that. There is this big movement. But do you know what? To hide away from it and just go, oh, it's not happening. It is happening.
It's irresponsible. And actually,
it's so irresponsible.
That's where I have issues with people. And like really contentiously, veal, people go, oh, that's really cruel. You go, absolute nonsense. If you're going to drink milk, you have to know that those, or, if there are cows giving birth to cows in order to create milk.
Yeah.
Unsurprisingly, males can't give any milk. So that is a waste product when you don't want to know what happens if they're not used in the food chain. I would much rather that those animals are run on in a field for a year and a half. They get to size and they're then sold as a beef product, as opposed to the alternative, which is wasteful and cruel and hideous. And it's the same with goats. People are quite happy to drink goat's milk and eat goat's cheese. But when it comes to eating goat or male kids, oh no, nobody wants to know. The truth of the matter is, if you're going to have anything from a dairy industry, you have to appreciate that either we find a market for the males or they get killed at birth virtually.
God, I never knew the hypocrisy. I never, ever knew. And when you think about it, of course, a cow needs to have a calf to produce milk. Where are those calves going? And then everyone's up in arms about veal while they're drinking a milkshake. It's a massive hypocrisy. And thank you
really
for actually educating me on that, because now there's something else I can ram down people's throats.
But you get shouted down, right? Because people are going, oh, meat this and meat that and meat the other. And actually, I sat down with a vegan and she challenged me on my business. And I had a very sensible, grown-up conversation with her, and I said, these animals are in existence. Now, from your perspective, would you rather these animals at the end of their lives were effectively discarded, or do you not see the alternative, which is people like us doing stuff with them? And they kind of said, well, it's a bitter pill to swallow, but given the whole context of the world, it's the least worst outcome from their perspective. Now, for us, older animals are the best animals for what we do. They're better tasting, they're bigger, they've got more fat content, there's more muscle tone because they've worked harder. Yes, they're a bit tougher, but that doesn't matter for what we do, and they've got more flavour. So they are, but trying to convince a farmer to keep a pig alive for 4 years to get to that weight is impossible because of the amount of feed, unless they're generating income otherwise, which is by farrowing or having litters. So it's one of these kind of symbiotic relationship which works. But we want people to challenge, where does their meat come from? We want them to challenge the sustainability and the ethics of what they do. But I think using a byproduct from an existing industry is as sustainable as you can get.
Yeah.
So as long as people are eating pork or drinking milk, we will have raw material for what we do.
And until you admit there's a problem, you can't fix a problem. And if everyone's just saying, we've just got to stop eating meat, well, that's not fixing a problem, because that's never going to happen. Yes.
What we're saying is eat, like from a meat producer, it sounds perverse to say eat less meat. But eat less meat, but when you do eat better meat, we have 2 or 3 days a week at home of no meat. And look forward to it when you do eat it.
Yeah. I bought a corn-fed, free-range, organic roast chicken.
Yeah.
A chicken to roast. I didn't, and I was like, oh God, I'd never spend this much. But you know what? We will then have chicken sandwiches, and then we'll probably do a chicken cut, and then I'll do something with the stock and a risotto, and then we'll have a couple of days where we won't need meat, and then it'll be time to buy some meat again. And I think, well, I can actually buy some really good quality meat. So that is honestly the best. I really think that, and I think, oh, how lovely. So I'm going to order some of your ham and salami, the one that you recommended.
Yeah, the achari, the smoked copper. Your German heritage would like the smoked element
this
to
is
that.
It. Get a really good salad. How do you suggest that people eat them? As in a sandwich or on a sort of platter? I mean, grazing is a huge deal these days. Have you noticed?
It's oh yeah,
raised boxes
raised
everywhere.
boxes and boards. I would say in the first instance, just eat them on their own, just to understand. Just taste them and take it out the fridge. Leave it for an hour before opening the packet, if it's been in the fridge. Let it come up to room temperature. eat one slice of it, just kind of get to grips with the flavors and the textures. But we do a spiced loin, and people always say, "How do you serve this?" And when they're in season, I serve them with white peaches, mozzarella, basil leaves, and olive oil.
Oh, I'll just knock that up later then.
Do you know what? It's 5 ingredients. It's an assembly job, no cooking.
Okay.
We do a black truffle and porcini salami, which we do with like a celeriac. See, I remembered you love celeriac. Celeriac and apple remoulade.
Growing up in Switzerland, a lot of celeriac grated with like a sort of
mayonnaise, yeah. So a celeriac remoulade, so that with truffle
that
salami.
Was it. Oh, so good. Yes, that would be my favourite.
Go old school. Wait till the melon is bang in season, like a Gallia or a honeydew, and have that with our air dried ham. Melon and ham. It's a classic.
Melon and Parma ham.
A winner. And so switch out the Parma for British air dried ham from Tempus.
Yeah, obviously.
And
so is Parma ham? You can't call something, but you can't make a Parma ham then.
No,
it has
because
to be,
it's from Parma. So
gotcha.
A Parma ham will be from Parma, in the same way that champagne is from Champagne. But you can have a sparkling wine made in exactly the same method with the same grapes, but it can't be called champagne because it's not from Champagne. Same with Parmesan. Same with what else is there? There's any number of things, but Parma ham has to come from Parma.
So that was me showing how stupid I was by saying,
but it's not at all.
If you were making Parma ham,
no, because people don't the differentiation. We don't have that understanding in this country about it. We still see charcuterie as very much a commoditized product. We don't realise that there's different degrees of it. That there's stuff in the supermarket you can get for £2-3 a pack, and ours are probably going to be £7 or £8 a pack. And actually, people go, "Oh well, it's just somebody cashing in on it." I guarantee you, we will make less profit on that. Guarantee than that lower price product.
That bright pink stuff from
than the Dayglow horror, the pink terror. Actually, that's a horrible thought, but
that's a great name for an evil character in a
evil band.
Pink terror. But actually, really good salamis, and I've had some really lovely ones in Germany. You don't need a lot.
Well, this is the other thing.
Quite rich, and
you don't need a lot. I guarantee you will eat less of ours than you would do of a kind of mass-produced. Much more sort of mechanized production, and you've hit the nail on the head. A little goes a long way, because it. I just think it sates you quicker. I don't know what it is about it, but you're absolutely right. It's one of those things where you pay for what you get, and if it's better stuff, you will eat less of it. Like saffron.
Yeah. Yes.
Less is more.
Now I want to. I know you've got to go, but I wanted to. I know that I DM'd you the other day about I made an assumption that you had your own peri-peri sauce, and my son is going to the gym at the moment, so it's a lot of bulking, a lot of protein, and a lot of this, and sometimes it's really bland, and he goes off and he'll get the Nando's peri sauce and sort of throws it on, and it makes it just about bearable. Yeah. It is actually, to be fair, and my kids did grow up loving spice and what have you, but I grew up with Rosemary Schrager. Yeah, very dear friend. I interviewed her a couple of weeks ago. Yes, and she's bringing out some pies.
Okay.
Did you know that she's bringing out a range of pies? I'm allowed to say.
Excellent.
I think, yeah, I am. No, I am, because she spoke about it.
So you're questioning yourself now and you're panicking.
Yeah, I'm suddenly like, hang on a minute. No. But I really think we need, based on the fact that you are the spice king. I mean, you're the sixth spice girl.
No, excellent.
See what I did there?
Very good.
And I just think, because I'm a bit lazy and I trust you because you're all about the ingredients and the niceness and the quality, could you just do Dhruv Baker ready-made spices and sauces, please?
So I do, and I've emailed you your homework.
Right. Good.
Which is a biryani recipe with a really complicated spice mix, but it's broken it out step by step, and you make the spice mix and it lasts in your fridge for weeks because you whiz it all up, and then you get this really unbelievably complex spice mix, and that's your starting point, and then the rest of it is how to do it all. So I'll tell you how many spices are in the mix. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, what spices are they? Am I likely to have them at home?
So dried red chilies.
Yeah, I can do that.
Dried bay leaves, but they've got to be Indian bay leaves.
When you say dry red chilies, sorry, I've already sensed an issue here. You don't mean flakes, you mean the powder, like dust.
I mean whole Kashmiri red chilies.
Oh, you see, I'd already cocked up.
See, so it's a whole Kashmiri red chilies, Indian
Right.
bay leaves, which are very different to the bay leaves we all have in our ornamental plants and trees. Coriander seeds, cumin seeds, mace, cassia bark, so a distinction to the really tightly rolled quills of cinnamon, but the more sort of barky looking stuff, cassia.
Yeah.
Cloves, star anise, green cardamom, black peppercorns, fennel, and turmeric.
Okay, I've probably got about 70%.
Well, there you go.
That's okay.
So there it gives you you've got an excuse for your trip to Luton
Yeah.
or Dunstable.
Or Waitrose.
Or Waitrose, and then the rest of the ingredients are pretty straightforward.
Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. And I might actually put something on my socials, because Stephen, when we do live bake-alongs, which we've done a couple of times, some live radio shows and the podcast, he almost cries with frustration at my sort of, whoa, what's that? No, you need to be concentrated. It's easily distracted, easily bored. So this has to be, I'm going to see, if I can master this, anyone can.
Okay, that's it then. The gauntlet is down.
Okay.
You've got to have a go.
What a perfect way to end. But where I want to get the hams, I want to get the books, I want to get it all. I want to have basically a sort of virtual Dhruv Baker in my kitchen, so I can cook amazing things and eat amazing things and read amazing things. Where do I go?
So, for all of the charcuterie, tempusfoods.com,
And that's
Tempus,
That's it.
tempusfoods.com, and that will tell you all about us. It'll get links to our shop. It'll give you an idea of stockists if you'd rather go in person and buy it. So that's as for the charcuterie side of things. We're going to be doing lots of recipes and content based around using charcuterie in starters or as canapes. There's all sorts. So there's going to be a big push on that. In terms of the book, Amazon is always your best bet, or local booksellers if they've got it. But you can get the Kindle version, which is probably easier way to consume it. So you've got it on your iPad while you're cooking and you're not smearing your turmeric fingers all over your book. That's
a very good... Do you know what? I'm a bit anti-Kindles, but on that occasion...
I am 100%, but I will have that on my iPad.
My Lisa Faulkner cookbooks are ragged.
And do you know what? There's something slightly upsetting about a pristine cookbook, but...
Yes, that's true.
They all start to smell of food after a while, which shows it's used, but is a little gross. So I would get the ebook, get it onto your iPad, stick it up in your kitchen, and then you can go along with it.
Love that.
And somebody seems to be squatting on my personal website because I'm useless with all things tech. So I'm in the process of getting that back, but there'll be lots of my recipes going on there.
Well, we'll put links up.
There's loads of The book's a great starting point for your recipes.
The kids' ones as well. Get your kids into spice. That's the one I think is I'm going to get that for my nephews and nieces.
Absolutely.
Get them. I'm going to get it for them because they are both my siblings are foodies anyway. So I think
there are some really simple
wonderful
books, recipes in there for the kids, designed for all kids to cook for their parents.
And for me.
Well, no, you've got the hellishly complex biryani.
You know I'm going to make Jeremy do this, don't you?
Yes, that's why I've emailed it to Jeremy.
Yep, the gauntlet has definitely been thrown. Dhruv, thank you so much. I've learnt so much today, and I think my listeners certainly will have done too. Thanks to you, of course, the listeners, for all your shares, likes, follows, and love for this podcast. Don't forget, you can find everything you need to know about Dhruv and his books and his restaurants and the food in the show notes. Until next time, take care. Goodbye.